Welcome to part 1 of the top 7 basic functions you should know in Excel. So as this is part 1, we're going to start super simple and super easy, and we're going to look at the sum function, which adds values together. So I have a bit of data in front of me. I've got an order, some order numbers, I've got an order amount, and I want to know the total of the order amount column. So when you're doing a function, there's 3 different ways you can start and you can add that function into Excel. You can use the ribbon at the top, so that's where all the different options are and buttons are. And if I click on the formula tab, then you'll see I can add functions in there. I've got different options. They're broken down into different sections, and as long as I know which one I'm looking for, then I'll be able to go and find the function that I'm looking for. The second way of doing it is where you would see just underneath the ribbon, where you would see what you were typing into a cell, there is an F and an X. And if I hover over that, you can see I've got insert function as an option. And if I click on it, the formula builder, the function builder is on the right hand side. I've got some recently used functions there, and I can also search, and that will help me. If it's a complex one, I might need a little bit more help understanding what I need to put into the system in order to get the information I want out of it. So you've got an option there as well. The third option, and probably the easiest one for this one, is to just type it in. And when you're doing simple functions, you might just want to type them in, because it'll really help you get used to how they are set up, how they are made up, what you start with, what you end with, and it'll help you work better in Excel going forward. So what you need to do is click on the cell where you want this data to appear, and then when you're adding in a function, the first thing you're going to do is put in the equal sign, because that tells Excel you're looking at a function. And then functions have really simple, easy to remember names, like sum, like count, like average, like trim, things like that are all functions. So you're going to pop in the easy to remember name, and you don't need to worry about capitals or lowercase. I'm just going to start typing in sum, and you can see it's appeared there on the drop down. And I'm going to select sum as my option. Once I do, it's opened me up some brackets, because I need to tell the system now, I need to tell Excel what I want it to add together. And I usually do that in brackets. And it's kind of giving me a little bit of information below in a pop-up to help me out and help me understand what I'm doing. Now there's 2 ways I can do this. I can either freehand and type this in, or I can just select the boxes. Now the easiest way to do this is obviously just go and select the boxes. So if I click and hold all the way down and drop it down, so you can see now it's D2 colon D13. So it's counting, it's adding together the values in D2 all the way down to D13. So that's going to give me a total. Now before I press enter, before I make this function work, I need to close my brackets, because I've opened my brackets. I need to remember to close them. Really easy to do on simple functions like this one, but if you've got a more complex one with multiple sets of brackets, then you must remember to close all of your brackets, or Excel won't be able to understand the function properly and won't be able to bring you the data back that you're looking for. So I'm going to close that bracket, and then I'm just going to press enter. And that's then giving me the figure I'm looking for. So nice, easy way of doing it. If I go back onto that cell, you can see the formula, the function, is in the bar at the top. If I want to make any changes, I'm just going to double click on it, and I can overtype it, or I can actually move that blue box that's currently around my data to show different data. So I've got a number of ways of amending that once I've created that sum function. So super easy one to start off with, and a little bit of information on there on how your functions are created. Welcome to part 2 of the top 7 basic functions you should know in Excel. So in this video, we're going to have a look at the average function, and you can see I've got a table of data there, and I have at the bottom an average cell and there's nothing in there. I've got an order amounts column and I want to know what the average order is. So I'm going to go through a similar sort of process that I did before, just to remind you. And remember, there are 3 different ways you can add in a function. You can go to the formula tab in the ribbon section at the top and select the relevant option there to find the average function. You can also use the bar just below that ribbon where it says fx and insert function, and you'll see you've got a number of recently used functions, and you can also search for any as well. Remember, your functions have easy to use names so that you remember them, like sum and average and count and things like that. So I'm going to do the same as before, and I'm actually going to go in and free type this one. So again, we just get used to working through these. So I'm going to click on the cell where I want to see this data, where I want the average to appear. And you're right, you know exactly what's coming next. I'm going to use the equal sign because that tells the system I'm looking at a function. And instead of typing in sum like I did in the first video, this time I'm going to start to type in average. So again, it doesn't matter if I'm lowercase or uppercase, just start typing in that friendly name of the function and you'll see that pop up. And I'm going to click on average. And when I do, it's given me a little bit of information to help me understand what I might need to put in next, and it's opened up that brackets. Remember, I must close it before I finish it off. So I've got a couple of options now. I need to tell Excel what data I want the average of, and I want it of the order amount. So I can either start typing it in, or just like I did in the sum video, I can start selecting it and pulling it all the way down. So again, it's D2 to D13. And it's got a comma in the middle of it because that's kind of like the to. It's showing me, rather than having to select each cell individually, I'm doing a selection. And finally, what I need to do is, because I've opened the brackets, I'm going to close the brackets. So I'm going to do a close bracket and an enter. And then it's given me an average of 89.58. Now, if I wanted to reduce the decimal points and just get 89 or 89.58 or 89.5.6, depending on how many decimal points, I can obviously format that cell, but that's giving me the average function that I was looking for. And the average order amount for me is nearly 90. Welcome to part 3 of the top 7 basic functions you should know in Excel. In this video, we're going to focus on some of the count functions, and I've got 3 of them to show you. Nice, simple examples. Again, we're going to build the functions out easily by using the quick way of doing it that we've done in the other videos. There are other count functions that are available, and some of them we'll probably look at later on in the bonus video. But we're going to start off with just doing a simple count. And remember, when you're doing functions, there are 3 ways that you can create them in Excel. You can go to the formula tab in the ribbon. So if I go up to the formula tab, you can select the relevant function in there. You can also use the FX in the bar just below the ribbon, and you can see the formula builder will pop up on the right hand side. But remember, the functions have simple, easy to remember names. So these ones I'm also just going to go and start to create in Excel. So I need to click on the cell that I want that information to appear in, and then just like any other function, I'm going to go for an equals. And this is going to be a count function. A basic, I want to count how many cells have numbers in them. So if you want to count numbers, then count is your best one. So I'm going to start typing in, and remember, it doesn't matter if you are lowercase or uppercase. The first one that's popped up is count, and I'm going to do that. I'm just going to click on that one. So just like our other 2 functions we've done in previous videos, all I need to do now is type in the cells that I want it to count, or just select them, and that's what I'm going to do. And then Before I press enter, because the bracket has opened, remember you need to close the bracket and press enter. And you can see there it says 9 of my cells have numbers in them. So if you're counting numbers, then count is going to be the best function for you. The second function I want to show you is count A. Now this works really well if you're not just counting numbers, if you're counting any other bits of information that might be in a cell. That could be some text, it could be an error code, or it could even be an empty text where the space bar's been pressed a number of times. It will count that as well. So just be aware of that if your figures are not looking like you'd expect. So I'm just going to get rid of the one that I've done, and I'm going to start again and find my count A, because you can see in the selection that I am working in, I've got it to be confirmed, and that wasn't counted when I did my count function. So if I equals and I start to type in again, the second option down there is count A. And again, it wants me to select the cells that it needs to look in. So I'm going to select all the way down. Remember to close my brackets. It's very easy to press enter at that point, and then you'll get an error, and press enter. And now it's 10, because it's not just looking at the numbers, it's looking at a cell that's got anything in it. So that might work better for you depending on what data you are working with. The final quick one I want to show you in this is counting blank cells. So there is a function for that as well. And if I do an equals sign and start typing in count again, below count A, you'll see count blank. And again, I'm going to select that same set of cells. I'm going to close my brackets and I'm going to press enter, and count blank, very simply, does what it says on the tin, will tell you how many cells don't have anything in them. So count is great if you have numbers and you want to know how many cells have numbers in them. Count A is great if you have a mix of types of information in your cells and you want to know how many of those cells have information in them. And count blank is great if you want to know how many blanks you've got. Welcome to part 4 of the top 7 basic functions you should know in Excel. In this video, we're going to focus on the min and the max functions. So these are really useful if you've got a list of data and you want to know the minimum number and the maximum number that's in there. So I've got a very small amount of data, but it's nice and basic and easy to work with when I'm doing these quick demos. I want to know what is the smallest order number and then what is the largest order number. So that is my example I'm going to work with. Just like the rest of the functions, you can use the formula tab at the top if you're looking in the ribbon. You can use the FX, or you can just start typing in, because they have really easy to remember simple names. So I'm going to start typing in because we're now used to this. We're on video 4. And remember, I'm going to start with equals. When I do equals, it knows I'm doing a function, so I'm just going to start typing in the easy to remember name, which is min. And when I do, I can see min option, minimum is what I'm looking for. Just like before, it's opened up a bracket and I need to tell the system, I need to tell Excel what cells to look at. So I can type it in, or I can just click and hold and select. Please do remember to close your brackets before you press enter. It's so easy to forget. And then the minimum order amount that I've got on there is 25. So really simple and really easy. If you've got a whole host of data, then it might be quite useful for you to use that. There is also then a max. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look for the maximum. I'm going to get rid of that, and I'm going to do an equal sign again, and I'm going to start typing in max. So instead of the minimum, I now want to know the biggest order amount that I've got there. And I'm going to select the cells again, I'm going to close my brackets, and I'm going to press enter and my largest order amount on this table is 200. So really simple if you want to find your minimum number and your maximum number in a load of data, and you want to create a function for that. Welcome to part 5 of the top 7 basic functions you should know in Excel. In this video, we're going to focus on the concat function. This function combines the values from multiple cells into one. So my data that I'm looking at in front of me has a first name and a surname in separate cells, and there may be times where I want to pull that information into one cell to then transfer it to somewhere else. So concat is a really useful way of doing that. So again, there's a number of different ways you can do functions. You can use the formula tab at the top in the ribbon. You can use the FX just underneath the ribbon, or you can just start typing the information in. So this is a little bit more complex, this one. I'm going to need a few bits of information. So I'm going to start with Alice Johnson at the top, and that's the cell where I want the full name to appear. So I'm going to do equals and concat. So CONCAT. It used to be called concatenate, but now it's been shortened to concat. And when I click concat, it's asking me what information I want to search for. So there's a few things I need to do in here. So first off, I need to tell which cell I'm pulling the first set of data from. So it's going to be Alice. And once I've done that, I need to break it up. So I'm going to break it up with a comma. And you can see the little pop-up box below that is now saying you need to pop your next set of information in. So I want Johnson. That's my next set. And if I wanted to pull more together, I would keep doing that with commas in the middle of them. I must remember, because I've got an open bracket, to close the bracket, and then I'm going to press enter. So it's now pulled that information together, but I've got a little bit of an issue in that there's no space in between Alice and Johnson, and it kind of looks a little bit weird. And when I pull that into another system, or I pull that data off, it's not always going to be clear what's the first name and what's the last name. So I need to tell the system to put a space in there. I need to tell it to put an empty space. So I'm going to go back onto Alice Johnson, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the formula bar just above my data, where the F and the X is, because I need to put a space in between the cells A2 and B2. So I'm going to click after the comma, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some speech marks. So I'm going to put a speech mark in there. I'm going to put a space, because that's what I want it to do. I want it to create a space for me in between the two different sets of data that it's pulling in. I'm going to put speech mark again in to close it, because I just want one space. And because that speech mark is right next to the final cell, I need to again break it up with a comma. So what I'm telling the system to do now is, if I just move my mouse, I'm telling it to look at the column A, then I'm telling it to put in a space, and then I'm telling it to look at column B. So when I press enter this time, now you can see Alice Johnson now has a space in between those two, and if I just go back up, you can see the formula that I entered there. And now if I just want to complete that, all I need to do is on the Alice Johnson, if I'm clicked on there, just drag that down and it'll pull all of that information through, because I've just dragged that function down. And I can now see I have all of that information, the full name, in that one cell. So I can now use that, pull that off at whatever I need to do. Welcome to part 6 of the top 7 basic functions you should know in Excel. In this video, we're going to focus on the if function and a few different variations of that function, just like we did in the count video. So the if function is a logic function. It tests whether a statement, a situation that you set, is true or false. and then takes an action based on whether it's true or false. So I've got a couple of really simple examples to work with, and then you can go ahead and play around with it and see what you can do. So I've got the same data that I was using in the previous videos to keep it nice and consistent. And what I'm going to do is I've created a new column called order type, and I want in there to identify if I've got any large orders. Now, a large order for me in this data is anything over 100. So probably I could go down and I could work this out myself, but if I had a bigger list of data, that would be really, really hard. So I'm just going to build an if statement. So I'm going to click on the order type column there, and just like before, this one I'm going to type in. I might use one of the other ways to do one of the more complex ones, so you can see a slightly different way of building it and how the system can help you. But I'm just going to go in and do an equals and then start typing in that quick, simple, easy name if. And if I click on if, it's giving me information. It's opened up my brackets. And what I need to do is then do the logic. So I need to tell it this cell here, if that cell is greater than or equals, so I want 100 and over 100, so that's my logic. If that cell is greater than or equal to 100, and put my comma in, I need to tell it what to do with that. So what I want it to do is to say large order, and anytime I'm putting text into Excel, into a function, I'm going to use speech marks. I'm going to open up and type in order, and I'm going to use speech marks to close it so it knows what I'm talking about. Comma again, and then I need to tell the system what to do if it's not greater than or equal to 100. Now I could put small order in there, but if I want to leave it blank, which is what I want to do, I'm just going to use the speech marks again immediately after each other, so nothing in between. So I'm going to do it once and I'm going to do it again, and that's telling it to do nothing, to leave it blank. What I need to do to finish this off is to close the brackets, because I've got a bracket open at the beginning. So close the brackets and press enter. And now, because that's 150, that is a large order. All I need to do now then is scroll down, pull it down, and it's now found anything that is greater than or equals 100, it's put large order in that comment, which is really, really useful, especially if you've got a lot of data. It's kind of a bit a way of doing some conditional formatting, but making it more complex. But obviously keeping that logic in. Remember, any text you want to type in, you're going to need to use those speech marks. And if you want something to be blank, just put 2 sets of speech marks in there with nothing in the middle. So that's if. Okay, let's look at sum if then, which is a variation of the if. And this allows me to add figures together based on logic, just like we did before. What I'm going to do is to sum all of the order figures for my large orders only. So I need to build a bit of a slightly more complex function for this one, and I'm going to use the fx part rather than start typing it in, so you can see a slightly different way of building your functions, and it may be a little bit easier for you as these get a little bit more complex. So I'm going to click on the cell where I want that data to appear, and then I'm going to click on the fx, and then in the right hand side you can see sum if is the one I most recently used, and that's the one I'm going to select. So I'm going to select it and click on insert function. Once I've done that, I've got a few bits of information I need to add. So I want to be a little bit clever here and say, okay, the range is this field here, because this is where the large order information came in. So that's where that information was. So I'm using the data I've already created in a previous function, which is super useful. And then the criteria is I want it to say large order. So equals large order. And I'll just put a cap in there. And then in the sum range, I want it to add those order amounts together. So what it's going to do, it's going to look in column G, any row that's got large order in, it's then going to look in column F and add those together and hopefully give me the correct result at the bottom. When I click on done, I didn't have to put any brackets in, any commas or any speech marks or anything. You can see at the top it's built my formula, my function for me really nicely. And you can see where that detail is, and it's given me a total of 700, sorry, read that totally wrong, which is correct. Just adding that up very quickly, that is absolutely correct. So you can see how you can use different bits of information and then add numbers together. If you had different areas, like you had different regions, you could sum all of your orders per region. Things like that would make it nice and easy. So the last one I want to go through is count if, and this is where I can count the number of cells that contain a logic statement that I add. So like before, greater than or equals 100. So I can do this really nicely and easy. And I'm just going to build this one out again to show you that detail. I'm going to do equals and I'm going to do count. And if I go down, I've got count if is just one logic statement. There is count ifs if you've got more than one logic statement there. But I'm going to keep it nice and simple for this video. So I'm going to do a count if. And then I want to tell it what cells it's going to count by selecting all those in the column, using my comma, so we'll build it out again really nicely. And then I need to put my logic statement in. So I want it to count it if it's greater than or equals to 100. I'm going to need to put this in speech marks. So I'm going to put my speech marks in there. Greater than or equals 100. And if I have speech marks in, I must remember to close the speech marks, just like I need to close the brackets. So I've asked it to count how many cells in that column equals greater than or equals 100. When I press enter, there is 6, which is correct. Again, just doing a quick tally up in my head because my data is nice and simple and easy to work with. So it's 6. So you can do some basic, simple if logic statements and create some quick functions, and then you can start adding them together. So you can count cells with certain logic statements. You can sum the figures together with certain logic statements, and you can do even more. Welcome to part 7 of the top 7 basic functions you should know in Excel. So in this last video, we're going to focus on the Vlookup function. And this is used when you want to search a table of data and find information and pull information out of it. Some examples of these could be that you want to find an employee name based on their employee ID. Maybe you've got 2 sets of data that have one data set that you can use in both, and you want to find some extra information out. I've got 2 tables on my screen right now. The top one is one you will have seen before in the other videos. The bottom one is the customer names, and I want to know the order numbers for them. So I'm going to find that out. Now these tables could be on different sheets within Excel, but they're on the same one, and they're nice and small and they're nice and easy, so you can see how the function works, and then you can go ahead and use it in more complex situations. So just like any other function, it's got an easy to remember simple name, so you can just start typing it in, but you can use the formula tab at the top or the FX bar. But on this final video, I am gonna just type it in so I can continue to show you how to build those functions, and then you can go away and add more complexity to them. So I'm going to start with equals because I always start with equals and start typing in Vlookup. When I select that, I first need to tell the system what to look up. So I want to look up Alice, and that's the cell to the left of where I am. And then I'm going to comma because I'm going to close that down and I want my next set of data. The next one is called table array. This is the data set that I want it to look from. And when you're selecting this, you must make sure you select the column where the data is. So the order number is column E on my top table. So I must make sure I select that data. So you can see how I've gone from left all the way onto column E. I could select more, but I don't need to because the only data I want to pull back is the order number, and I've selected that within my table. I'm going to press my comma, and now I need to tell the system what number column do I want it to pull back. So the order number column is number 5, so that is the number I'm going to put in there because it's going to pull back that number. Final comma, and then I need to tell the system how accurate I want it to be. Do I want it to give me an approximate match, or do I want it to give me an exact match? And if you want an exact match, then you're going to type in false. Close your brackets and press enter. And Alice's order number is ORD 2168, which I can see there right at the top. So that's perfect. That's pulled the right data through. All you're going to do then is click on that cell and drag it down to pull the rest of the details through. And you can now see how easy it is to pull data off one table into another as long as you've got one consistent data set across the two tables. Welcome to part 7 of the top 7 basic functions you should know in Excel. So in this last video, we're going to focus on the Vlookup function. And this is used when you want to search a table of data and find information and pull information out of it. Some examples of these could be that you want to find an employee name based on their employee ID. Maybe you've got two sets of data that have one data set that you can use in both and you want to find some extra information out. I've got two tables on my screen right now. The top one is one you will have seen before in the other videos. The bottom one is the customer names, and I want to know the order numbers for them. So I'm going to find that out. Now these tables could be on different sheets within Excel, but they're on the same one, and they're nice and small and they're nice and easy, so you can see how the function works, and then you can go ahead and use it in more complex situations. So just like any other function, it's got an easy to remember simple name, so you can just start typing it in, but you can use the formula tab at the top or the FX bar. But on this final video, I am gonna just type it in so I can continue to show you how to build those functions, and then you can go away and add more complexity to them. So I'm going to start with equals because I always start with equals and start typing in Vlookup. When I select that, I first need to tell the system what to look up. So I want to look up Alice, and that's the cell to the left of where I am. And then I'm going to comma because I'm going to close that down and I want my next set of data. The next one is called table array. This is the data set that I want it to look from. And when you're selecting this, you must make sure you select the column where the data is. So the order number is column E on my top table. So I must make sure I select that data. So you can see how I've gone from left all the way onto column E. I could select more, but I don't need to because the only data I want to pull back is the order number, and I've selected that within my table. I'm going to press my comma, and now I need to tell the system what number column do I want it to pull back. So the order number column is number 5, so that is the number I'm going to put in there because it's going to pull back that number. Final comma, and then I need to tell the system how accurate I want it to be. Do I want it to give me an approximate match, or do I want it to give me an exact match? And if you want an exact match, then you're going to type in false. Close your brackets and press enter. And Alice's order number is ORD 2168, which I can see there right at the top. So that's perfect. That's pulled the right data through. All you're going to do then is click on that cell and drag it down to pull the rest of the details through. And you can now see how easy it is to pull data off one table into another, as long as you've got one consistent data set across the two tables. Welcome to a bonus video of some extra functions you should know in Excel. So we've already gone through my top 7, and here's a few more that might be quite useful when you're working with different data sets. So in this video, we're going to have a look at len, trim, left, right and mid. So a few different ones to play around with there. So let's have a look at len first. Len finds the exact number of characters, including spaces, within a cell. So if you've got a set of data, you may be looking at reference numbers or something and you wanted to find one that doesn't quite look right, then you might want to pull back some length detail, and then you can see if there's anything that you're missing. Do remember it pulls back spaces as well. So I'm going to use this empty column I've got to the right hand side. And I'm going to click in that cell, and just like every other function we use, there's a nice, quick, simple, easy way to start typing it in. I don't have to use the formula tab or the FX, but I can use it if I want. All I'm going to do is equals LEN, and you'll see len pop up. And then all it needs is the cell that I want to calculate how many characters and spaces are in that cell. It also, if you've got any random spaces in there that you shouldn't have, it will also identify them so you can tidy your data up. So I'm going to select Alice on the left hand side, close my brackets and press enter, and it's given me 5 back, which is the amount of characters in Alice's name, so I know there's no extra spaces there. And what I can do is I can pull that down again and just check on the length of the rest of my data. So a nice easy one. If you just want to check the information, you might find that a little bit useful. The next one is trim. Now trim removes empty spaces in a cell. So if you've got data that's a little bit weird when it's come in, if you've got extra spaces, if you've got spaces at the end of a cell that you might not be able to see, and you could have seen that when you did a length, because it's bigger than what you think. So let me just do this on either. If I just put a few spaces in there and press enter, the length of either has just gone to 6 because there's some spaces in there and the system counts it. Trim will remove those. So if I just remove those that I put in and go to either and equals and trim, select it and select that name there, close my brackets and enter, it will close it down, it will give me just either there. So it's reduced those spaces. It will pull it out into the new column, but then you can copy and paste those values or do what you want with it to get rid of those empty spaces, which is really useful. Especially if you're going to do a Vlookup or you're pulling that data into another system. Okay, let's have a look at another one then. We've got a few here. We've got left, right and mid. So this is where you want to find certain and pull certain parts out about some data that you're looking at. So left is where you're going to pull a number of characters from the left of a cell, a data set. So I'm going to start this again by doing an equals and left, and I can show you a really great example of this. So when I do that, I then need to tell the system what cell I'm going to look into. Let's look in the order number cell. I'm going to put a comma in. And then I need to tell the system how many characters I want it to pull back, and it's going to pull it back from the left. So let's do ORD and then the first 2 numbers. So that's going to be 5 characters I want it to pull back. Close the bracket and press your enter. And you can see it's pulled me back ORD 21 in that column. And if I pull down, you can see I've got different ones there. And then I can play around with that data. So if you want to pull information from the left, maybe the start, maybe it could be the area code of a telephone number, something like that, the first name or the first letter of the first name, something like that, you can pull all of that information in really nicely. Just going to get rid of that and just show you right. So you've also not just got left, you can equals at right as well. Click on that one, tell the system what cell you want it to look into, press your comma, and then again tell your system how many cells you want it to bring, characters, sorry, you want it to bring back. So I'm going to bring back 4 because there's 4 numbers in my order number. Close the brackets and pull it down, and you can just see there it's taken out ORD, and I can now just see the numbers that differ in all of those order numbers. So really, really easy to work that one out as well. The final one, let's have a quick look, very similar, is mid. So if I want to pull something out from the middle, then I can do that as well. So let's do equals mid to show you this example. When I click that, I need to again tell the system what cell I'm going to pull that detail from. And then I need to tell the system what starting position. So I'm going to press a comma and let's do the numbers. So I don't want ORD, so I don't want 1, 2 and 3. I want 4. I want it to start on 4. And then I need to tell it how many characters I want it to bring back. So if I do a comma and 2 and close that bracket, it's brought me back 21. So if I just go back onto that, you can see I've picked the data set, the cell. I've told it where I want it to start and how many characters I want it to bring back. So again, a different way to pull back similar data. And just like I did before, I can pull that down and see all of that information. So that was a few extra functions you might want to use in Excel. Please do check out the rest of the videos in this series. Have a look at the videos on the channel. Please do like and subscribe, and do let me know if you want me to record any specific videos.